Again, if you sign into our sign-in sheet up front, make sure you do that. Also, if you would like to make public comment after our presentations, make sure you grab a slip of paper out there and fill it out. Get it to one of us so that we can make sure that your public comment is heard during the public comment section. If we don't have a piece of paper with your name on it, then we won't know that you want to make public comment. So make sure that those are filled out. We ask that you do please be respectful of the presenters and audience members and withhold all remarks until the public comment portion of the meeting. And now I would like to introduce Secretary of State Diego Morales to kick off our meeting this evening.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. And thank you for being here today. Welcome to the fifth and final election study public meeting. I want to start by thanking each of you for being here today. But first of all, let me recognize some members of the General Assembly here. We have State Representative Mike Andrade. Sir, thank you for being here. Representative Earl Harris. And of course, you have your County Clerk, Mike Brown. Thank you for all. And many other elected officials here, thank you for coming. Thank you so very much. As Indiana Secretary of State, it is both my duty and privilege to ensure that our elections are free, fair, safe, and secure. We are here today because of House Enroll Act 1633. This legislation requires my office to study two important issues. First, the consideration of holding municipal elections during presidential or midterm election years. Second, whether or not to use vote centers across Indiana. To carry out this study, the law requires us to hold 3 public meetings. Now, we added 2 additional meetings and launched an email to make sure we give Hoosiers even more of an opportunity to provide input. During these meetings, we want to hear from Hoosiers. We want to include these public opinions we receive in our final report for the Legislative Council. Whether you are for or against moving we hold municipal elections, or whether you are in support or in opposition to use vote centers in Indiana and in your county, we want to know. Since taking office, I have traveled all 92 counties going to speak about elections. Everywhere I go, I've been bringing up elections and the possible changes to the election process, because elections impacts us all. And Hoosiers know best how we run our elections. Today's meeting is the 5th of these meetings. We were only required to hold 3 meetings, but we wanted to go above and beyond the call of duty. We are hosting these sessions to make sure voices from across Indiana are heard. We want to hear your opinion, but before doing that, my office and the Voting System Technical Oversight Program from both states will be sharing some data to all of you. Our office has collected important election data from local election administrators from across the state and from election administrators in the voting survey published by the Election Assistance Commission. We have also collaborated very closely with the Voting System Technical Oversight Program to ensure that our study is detailed. My office will be presenting on the timing of municipal elections, and the Voting System Technical Oversight Program will be presenting on the use of vote centers in Indiana. The information that will be presented today, along with information we receive from public comments, will come together in a report we must submit to the Legislative Council by November. Before I close, I want to take a moment to thank many of you that I see here. I see Jessica from the County Clerk from Porter County here as well. Thank you, Jessica, for coming, for joining us. Many of you came to support us at our great Indiana State Fair. My office was once again the proud sponsor of the $2 Tuesdays, and we had booths set up every day, registering as many eligible Hoosiers to vote and be part of the election process. I am committed to increase voter turnout and voter participation, and that is why we are doing a lot of outreach. Since taking office, we've been hard at work making sure Indiana continues to lead the way. And that is why I'm proud to share with you that under the Morales administration, Indiana is ranking now number 7 in the nation when it comes to election integrity, according to the Heritage Foundation. I am proud to share that with you. And that is done by working together as a team. Your input is important. It is so important and to be part of this process. Thank you again for being here and your dedication to our great Hoosier state. Now I will turn it over to my team so we can begin the presentation. Be ready for some data. I hope you are ready. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much, Secretary Morales. All right. Is it still on? Okay, just making sure everyone can still hear me. There's a lot of people in here. Hi. Kagan Prentice and Dustin Renner from the Secretaries of State's office will begin the presentation. They will be presenting their findings related to municipal elections and the cost of elections. Once they are done, Matt Housley from the Voting System Technical Oversight Program will present his and Dr. Chad Kinsella's findings, who unfortunately couldn't make it here tonight. His kids are on fall break. They will be presenting their findings related to the use of vote centers in Indiana. As a reminder, both presentations will be showcasing nonpartisan data. The Voting System Technical Oversight Program, the Secretary of State and his office will not be making any recommendations to the General Assembly. We have just been tasked with collecting and reporting our findings and data, and of course, getting input from all of you. We will go ahead and begin our presentations. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here today. As mentioned, we'll start with the municipal election portions of the study. Am I on? About that. It's to the cost of running municipal elections. Hold it. All right. Going to move to the podium. Independent. All right. Is that better? No. All right. How about now? Still not loud enough? Teach your voice. All right. So starting off, I'm going to look at Indiana Code 3537. And so this is the code that allows counties to be reimbursed for municipal election costs. All right. And then so counties will use this to track election costs and then turn that into municipalities to be reimbursed. So the 2023 municipal primary election, we were able to collect data from 66 of the 92 counties. I'm sorry, 66 of the 92 counties held primary elections, and one county we were unable to find the costs for. It's about $8.8 million to conduct a primary election in 2023. And the 2023 municipal general elections, we looked at it was about $9.5 million. 86 of the 92 counties held municipal elections that year, and 4 counties we were unable to find a cost for. So the total of municipal elections in 2023 was about 18 million. Moving on to the 2022 primary. We were unable again to find costs for one county. So it was at $8.9 million for the cost of the primary, and the general cost $10 million. And again, we were able to find the total cost for one county for a total of 18.8 million. And then finally, looking at presidential elections, the 2024 primary was collect data from all 92 counties for about 13.3 million, and then the 2024 general was about 16.2 million for a total cost of nearly 30 million. And I would also add that we have data from the 18, 19, and 20 elections that we're not presenting today, but those will be in the final report, and they were very similar and consistent in terms of cost as the ones I just presented. And then finally, going to look at voter turnout. So the municipal general election, we had about a 20% turnout. Midterm general election, we had about a 40% turnout. In the presidential general, we had about a 62% turnout. And during the 2022 midterm general, the election cost an additional 5.67% to run compared to the 2023 municipal general election. We saw a nearly 92% increase in voter turnout. And then the 2024 presidential general election cost an additional 73% to run compared to the 2023 municipal general election, and saw nearly a 10% increase in voter turnout. Turn it over to Kagan now.
Okay, so after taking the data in terms of the cost of the elections and voter turnout, we wanted to look at cost per vote. So that is taking the total cost of each of these elections and dividing that by the number of voters, the raw vote total from each of those elections. And on the screen here, you can see, starting with the primaries between the municipal, midterm, and presidential. And obviously these years are 22, 23, and 24. So the 2023 municipal primary, the cost per vote in that election was $27.81. 2022 midterm primary, the cost per vote was $13.42, and the presidential primary of 2024 saw a cost per vote of $16.52. So the cost per vote in a municipal primary election was 107.29% greater than that of a midterm primary election cost per vote, and 71.14% greater than a presidential primary election cost per vote. And as Dustin said previously, we do have the data for 18, 19, and 20 cycles. With the total cost, it lined up. The 2020 presidential election saw a higher turnout, so the cost per vote was a little lower. The 2018 midterm election saw a little higher turnout, so the cost per votes for those elections across the board were a little lower. The municipal elections stayed about the same. Just for some information, that will be our final report, which will be public, so you'll be able to see that. Going on to the general elections, the percentage difference between those cost per votes does actually increase. So a municipal general election, the cost per vote was $15.52 for the 2023 municipal general. The 2022 midterm general cost per vote was $5.26 per vote, and the presidential general election saw a cost per vote of $5.47. So the cost per vote in that's supposed to be municipal general election is 195.06 greater than a midterm election cost per vote, and 183.73% greater than presidential election cost per vote. So moving on, we wanted to look at highlighting specific county by county cost per votes, because obviously you can take the entire state cost of the election divided by the raw vote total and get a statewide cost per vote. These decisions are really, this funding is done at a county by county level. So it's good to look at the sort of range that you see across the state. So we wanted to sort of look at the highest cost per vote, the lowest cost per vote, the average across all 92 counties. So starting with the 2023 municipal primary, counties range from the lowest of a $3.14 cost per vote to the highest of a $473.29 per vote. in the municipal primary elections, with a county average of $45.24. The municipal general election, the costs range from the lowest having $1.58 per vote to the highest being $557.60 per vote, with a county average of $33.22. The midterm primary election, the midterm primary counties range from the lowest of $2.93 per vote to the highest with $56.78 per vote, with a county average of $15.37. The midterm general counties range from $1.81 per vote to the highest being $48.96 per vote, with a county average of $6.51. Presidential counties range from $2.77. Presidential primary counties range from $2.77 per vote to the highest $44.47 per vote. Presidential general election counties range from the lowest of 67 cents per vote to the highest of $44.33 per vote. So you can see throughout the primary to the municipal, midterm, and presidential, the primaries and the generals, the more people that vote, the lower that cost per vote will be, the lower the range statewide would be. Obviously, you see those municipal, primary, municipal, general, the range is very high, between $3 and $470. But when you get to that presidential general, you have 67 cents to $24. So that range gets smaller and the numbers get smaller. So other things that we decided to look at other than costs, we wanted to look at potential increases in voter turnout you could see by moving municipal elections to an even numbered year. So what we decided to do for that was look at the population of voters that voted in 2023, the 2023 municipal general election, didn't vote in 2022, and inversely, the 2023 voters that didn't vote in 2024. So for the 2022 general election, we found that there were 78,693 voters that had voted in the 2023 municipal general election, but did not vote in that 2022 general election. Obviously, voters don't vote for whatever reasons. For this one, we're just determining that these voters just for some reason wanted to vote for municipal issues, but maybe not interested in those national issues. So if you get those voters to vote in that 2022 general election, that would equate to a 1.65% voter turnout increase. Obviously, 2024, more people voted, so you had less of this population, and we found that 23,395 voters that voted in that 2023 municipal general election did not vote in that 2024 general election, which would have only equated to a 0.48% increased turnout. So marginal turnout increases that you would see. But what we did not account for is an increase in campaign spending for local candidates that'd be additional driver for voter turnout. Campaign finance data at the local level is hard to come by. Very few counties post that online. So that's not something we were able to look at. So the next thing that we decided to look at, and this was based off a lot of discussion actually in committee when this bill is being heard. A lot of discussion was had on ballot drop-off rates, and obviously longer ballot, more people may not vote for people at the bottom of the ticket. So here we did look at previous studies. They did find that ballot fatigue might lead voters to skip on lower profile races on a longer ballot. The increased turnout that you see in those on election cycles, so that presidential or midterm year, outweigh the effects of those drop-offs. So having that main election that draws voters increases the likelihood that they will participate in those down ballot races, even though you have some that just won't vote for those down ballot races for whatever reason. So one thing that we wanted to look at, some ballot drop-off races between mayor and city council, and compare that to races you see in midterm presidential years. So we pulled three competitive mayor's races from 2023. We wanted to look at the ballot drop-off rate from mayor to city council, and keep in mind that these years are two races on the ballot. So this is the ballot drop-off race from one to the next. So we looked at Indianapolis mayor to the city council, and that ballot drop-off rate was 8.84%. We looked at Fort Wayne mayor to Fort Wayne city council, and that ballot drop off was similar, 8.73%. Looked at the ballot drop off for the Carmel's mayor's race. That is actually lower, and the next slide will sort of help explain that, was 4.09%. So we wanted to compare those races to some ballot drop offs in the 2024 and 2022 elections. So you looked at president to county surveyor. We picked county surveyor because they are the lowest countywide official on the ballot. So looking at the ballot drop off rate statewide between president and county surveyors for only the counties that obviously that elected county surveyors that year, our drop off rate was 22.74%. So almost over twice as much as even the highest Indianapolis mayor's drop off rate. And then we looked at for the 2022 election, it was easy because every township trustee is elected during midterm years. So the ballot drop off rate from the Senate race in 2022 to township trustee was 19.56%. We look at a contributing factor in these ballot drop off rates, and contested elections seem to be a big factor in ballot drop off rates. So in the county surveyor races that we looked at, 87% of those were not contested. The township trustee races in 2022, 85% of those throughout the state were uncontested as well. So comparing that to the city council races, only 50% of the Fort Wayne council went uncontested. And 40% of the Indianapolis council went uncontested, and only 17% of the Carmel city council went uncontested. So if you factor those in, that sample size, that factor in those and the drop off rates, the difference gets smaller, but still a difference in ballot drop off rates when you get to the longer ballots. One thing we also wanted to look at outside of county costs that are incurred, state costs. There are some state cost impacts as well. The BMV has to be open the Monday prior to election day and election day for extended hours when there's an election per state code. There's a cost for the state election division for Democracy Live to provide accessibility to site disabled voters. That is a per election cost. So $50,000 in the primary, $50,000 in the general. There's a cost for the election division for the state voter registration system vendor to keep their help desk call center open for extra hours on election days. And there's a cost for Homeland Security and law enforcement support for our office on election days. We also wanted to look at some other studies as well relating to voter turnout, just to get some data in here. A study of 340 elections from 144 cities from 1996 to 2011 saw an average turnout of 25.8%, and a separate study of 332 elections in 38 cities over 25 years found an average turnout of 27%. So the low turnout that we see in Indiana, these off-cycle elections, isn't just an Indiana problem, it is a national problem. And the final thing we looked at is the representative of the electorate, and what we looked at here is elections with fewer ballot could lead to selective participation and could produce a voter pool that is disproportionately comprised of those who care most about the issue at stake, potentially allowing special interest groups to have influence over election. This is where we really pulled from other studies that have looked into this issue specifically and how the electorate could be represented in these off-year elections with lower turnouts. Study that we did find specifically related to how this could have an impact with school board races being off cycle. Obviously, that's not an issue in Indiana because those are on cycle. They looked at the propensity of teachers voting in off cycle school board elections. And they found that teachers are 7 times more likely to vote in school district elections when they're off cycle compared to the general public. So swap out teachers with government officials or people that are just interested in one issue at stake in this election, and you'll find that similar result. And we also looked at studies that show that voters in local elections are demographically unrepresentative of the electorate overall. So that is the last thing we looked at, and I'll hand it over to VStop to go into vote centers.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So by the way, sorry, you're going to have to listen to me for a while. Dr. Kinsella couldn't be here because his kids were on fall break. But we normally split this presentation up. So you all, for the first time, are going to hear me give this presentation and some of the slides for the first time. So you got to just bear with me. I will also preface, these slides are going to the Legislative Council for the report. So there's a lot of information on them. So for the people who are probably like less than 4 rows from the front, you're not going to be able to see everything that's on the slide. But that's okay. I'll walk you through it. We're going to get through it together. Okay? So again, I serve as VSTOP's Election Systems Audit Specialist, and then Dr. Chad Kinsella is our Executive Director, and he serves as an Associate Professor of Political Science at Ball State University. So the goal of the study that HEA 1633 gave us was to look at the estimated cost savings and the effects on voter turnout by requiring all counties to use vote centers. So again, this goal was assigned. This goal was not, VSTOP did not create this goal. This was assigned to us by the state legislator. And so this was not independently selected by us. So based on that, we decided to focus on a few key areas that we felt contributed to election cost and voter turnout. So we looked at election staffing, equipment usage, voting locations, the overall estimated election cost, and then voter turnout and voter experience. So we did 2 different kinds of analysis. When we looked at voter turnout and we looked at voter experience, we did a statistical analysis, and I'll talk a little bit more about the statistical methods that we utilized later on. And then for the other categories, we used what was called a raw data comparison. And this is very simple stuff. It's just taking averages, and it's just taking averages of data and reporting those averages that we found. So those were the 2 different methods that we utilized, and then those were the categories that fall into those. Again, you're going to see a lot of heavy slides, but it's because the Legislative Council is getting this report and I need to make sure they have all the information they need. But we'll walk through it. So this is the data that we collected. We utilized the United States EVES survey, which was by the Election Assistance Commission. We used it from 2016, 18, 22, and 24. The Indiana state election data. So this is just publicly available election turnout data from 2012 through 2024. We utilized the MIT survey on the American performance of election performance, which is a really great survey that surveys people from all across the country, and actually surveyed about 200 to 300 participants from Indiana in those given years. So in 2012, 14, 16, 22, and 24. And we got their data to utilize in our analysis. So it was a survey of voters done about their elections. The 2025 Secretary of State survey, as well as the county CEB-9 forms. So those are just an overview of the election that every county is required to submit. Some important considerations, we did not include 2020 in this analysis. And the reason we didn't was because it was an election like no other, right? We may have had to have extra additional voting places to make room for social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. People were voting by mail instead of voting by in person. And so there was just a lot of factors in 2020 that would not allow for, it would basically be an outlier. So to create a better and more concise data set, we did exclude 2020 from our analysis. These are preliminary findings, and so they are all subject to change. And lastly, the data and the analysis that we are providing is nonpartisan, and it is simply us just providing our findings. So as always in research, you got to take a look and see what literature is out there. So what we found is, and really, why is literature important? And why do we do this ahead of time? And because it already helps us know what's out there. We already want to know what studies have been done on vote centers, and we want to see what other people across the country found in their research experiences. It also helps add credibility to our work, because if we know that we are utilizing analysis methods and stuff that other researchers have done previously, it's going to give us more credibility in our findings. I will say that you're going to see some literature that is not from Indiana, and that's on purpose because we're trying to see what the landscape looks like for literature across the United States. And there's not been a lot of research that is done in Indiana specifically on vote centers and election costs. And so just as a heads up, when you see these literature, that's kind of what you can expect. So what we first found on turnout was that there were some studies done in Colorado and Texas, and we found that vote centers, slightly increased turnout, especially among infrequent voters, but it did not really impact turnout outside of that. Research in California also showed a modest boost in turnout, but again, the statistics show that there is not a large increase in turnout either way. The type of election really matters. So vote centers may impact local or municipal elections more, but may not have an impact on the presidential election. And we'll talk about why that is, because there's a lot of research and a lot of data that shows why that is. So on the voter experience side, we found, the literature has found that there is high levels of satisfaction reported by people who use vote centers. That's pretty consistent across the board. What we found, though, is that the rollout really matters in vote centers. So if they're rolled out, the voters feel well informed. They were able to find their polling places easily. They were able to have access. They didn't feel as though they were being disfranchised in any way. When that happens, they have really high levels of satisfaction. But like anything else, when the rollout doesn't go so well and there's super long lines, they didn't have enough equipment at the polling place, et cetera, that's really going to make it a negative experience for people. On election costs, what we found is that this is where the data is the most concrete across the board. So in almost all studies that were done, we were able to look at when it comes to vote centers is cost. And it found that overall, both in Colorado, in this small little town in Farragut, Tennessee, and a study that was done by the Indiana the Indiana Fiscal Policy Institute found that there could be significant cost savings for the county to move to a vote center model. And that's the truth. That's the fact of it. That's all of the research has been able to show that over the course of the analysis. So that was a little bit, that's kind of where we took our literature or took our study, was taking the basis of these literature and then doing a study similar to Indiana. So this is vote center adoption for the time that we conducted the study. This is from 2012 to 2024. As you can see there is a split point where there was 43 counties using vote centers and 43 counties using precinct-based models. That was in 2020, but from 2018 to 2022, we saw the largest increase in counties adopting vote centers. Just wanted to give you all that for some context. So we did a ton of different analysis. So you're going to see a bunch of different ways that we did this data, because just running the numbers one way is not a good way to showcase solid research. So we ran these numbers many different ways to be able to get a robust analysis. So the first one that we wanted to look at was, did counties that use precinct-based models in the 2016 election, what was their poll worker needs and usage in that election? And did their poll worker usage and need change in 2024, which saw a pretty similar turnout across the board in Indiana? Again, so these slides you're going to see, these are what's called our data slides. This just allows people to be able to see where our data is coming from and what counties were included in this analysis. So what we found is we found 36 counties that utilized precinct-based voting in 2016, but then in that time switched and then began using vote centers and were using vote centers in the 2024 general election. We also decided that it would be great to have a control group. So we needed to look and say, okay, what are the counties that have remained precinct-based in 2016 and 2024? And what were the differences in their poll worker usage as well? So here's what we found. What we found is that on average, counties who utilize vote centers used approximately 32% fewer poll workers when they switched. So from 2016 to 2024, they used approximately 32% fewer poll workers in the 2024 election. And remind you, the 2016 and 2024 elections were very similar in terms of turnout in Indiana. So it's not like it was like, oh, this is a tiny little election in 2016 and a huge election in 2024. These were very similar elections, which is why we utilized them. And what we found is that in the precinct-based counties, which Lake County is currently, they also began and ran more efficient elections. They used on average 13% fewer poll workers. So again, when you subtract the control group, to get the really actual difference in the amount of poll workers that was utilized, we found that vote center counties, when they switched from precinct-based to vote centers, used approximately 19% fewer poll workers overall. We wanted to do the same analysis, but we broke it down by county size because, yet again, little tiny Switzerland County and little tiny Stark County and Adams County, those are going to look very different than the county in which we're sitting, etc. So we did want to break it down by county size because we know that that is not a good comparison of Switzerland County to Lake County. So we broke it down by size. This is the information that you can see. I'll walk you through it. So what we did is we used an 8-year average turnout. Okay. So we took those elections that we utilized and we did an 8-year average turnout. And this was to be able to give us the most realistic picture of what turnout looks like in Indiana. Because the registered voters, as you know, in Lake County is pretty high, but when you're breaching about 50 to 55% turnout, that makes a huge difference in the analysis. So we wanted to use a very realistic analysis for this. So we did utilize an 8-year average turnout. And that's how we got these size jurisdictions. So we had 35 small counties, 15 medium counties, 4 large counties, and 4 extra large counties, which for your reference, since we're here in Lake County has always classified as a large county in this analysis. So what we found in small counties, which again, this does not apply to Lake County, but in small counties, we found pretty similar findings. We found that small counties used on average 37% fewer poll workers in those counties that switched from precinct-based to vote centers. And then our precinct-based counties also used fewer vote centers in 2020, or fewer poll workers in 2024. And they used about 12% fewer, which would equate to approximately about a 25% reduction in poll worker needs for small counties. In medium counties, the effect was not as great when we actually broke it down by county size. We found that they used about 28% fewer poll workers for medium-sized counties when they switched their vote to a vote center model. But the precinct-based counties that have remained precinct-based also used significantly less poll workers in the 2024 election. They used approximately 26% fewer poll workers than they did in 2016, which equates to about a 2% difference overall. For the large counties, what we found is that, getting ahead of myself. In the large counties, what we found is pretty similar effects in terms of the savings on poll workers usage, which is about 37 or 34% fewer poll workers for those large counties. In the precinct base, they used about 27% more poll workers. Now, as you can see here, though, this analysis only was able to include 4 counties overall. Okay, so the validity of the findings when you have a smaller group to sample size, right, needs to always be taken with a grain of salt. I also will say that I did speak to Monroe County directly, and they added additional voting locations in 2024, which is why they're the only county and shows an increase in their poll worker usage. In the extra large counties, we only had one extra large county that met this requirement. That was Marion County. And then we have Allen, Hamilton, and Lake County that met our extra large precinct-based requirements. So Marion County utilized approximately 14% more poll workers. I'm not going to claim to know why they utilized more poll workers. I'm betting it's similar to Monroe. They offered more voting locations or needed more staff to get those lines down to manageable times. So I would almost bet that that's probably why. But one thing that I will say consistently across all of these analyses as we go through them, you're going to find that Hamilton, Allen, and Lake County arguably run the most efficient elections for how large their counties are. Yeah, so you guys deserve, your election officials deserve a clap for that, 100%. And like I said, you'll see that throughout this analysis that consistently Hamilton, Lake, and Allen counties are really doing a great job in terms of how they're running their elections. That's not to say that the rest of Indiana is also not doing a great job, because they are as well. Just not as good as you all, I guess, right? That's not my opinion. But no. So then we decided to do the same exact analysis, but looked at it in a midterm. Did the effects of poll worker usage change in an election that typically sees a little bit lower turnout than a presidential election? So again, we utilize the exact same data. Well, we utilize the same data sets, but what we found here is that 42 counties were eligible for this analysis because again, they must have been able to use precinct-based in 2018 and then used a vote center in 2022. So what we found is that 19 counties utilized 19 counties utilized precinct-based and then switched to vote centers. And then we still had a control group. So we had 23 counties that remained precinct-based from 2018 to the 2022 election. And so what did we find? We found very similar findings to the presidential election. On average, elections were more efficient in 2022 than they were in 2018. We found that they used approximately 39% fewer switched. They had a 39% reduction in the amount of poll workers they used from 2018 to 2022. We also found out that precinct-based counties also ran effective elections, and they used 17% less poll workers in 2022 than they used in 2018, which equates to, on average, a 22% difference. So really, vote center counties can net a 22% fewer poll workers compared to the precinct-based counterparts. So we did the exact same thing. We broke it down by size. So for our small counties, we found that they used approximately 37% fewer poll workers. The precinct-based counties used 14% fewer poll workers, which equates to about a 23% reduction in poll worker needs for counties that switched. For our medium-sized counties, we found an even greater effect. So this is where it did not have a huge effect on the poll workers in the general election, but for the midterm elections, it really did have a great effect. And this is why we looked at both election cycles. They used 41% fewer poll workers in 2022 than they did in 2018. And then the precinct-based counties used 29% fewer poll workers. A 12% reduction overall in the poll worker needs for counties that switch. In our large counties, again, there's only 2 counties that met the requirements, St. Joseph and Monroe. And we found that St. Joseph County used approximately 47% fewer poll workers in the 2022 midterm than they used in the 2018 midterm. We also found, though, that in Monroe County, they used approximately 13% workers in the 2022 in that time, so we couldn't really complete an analysis there. So we wanted to take a deeper dive into 2024. This is the most recent election we have, and so we thought it would be best to really look at the most recent data and the most recent election. So what we did is we utilized all 92 counties. They were basically coded as vote center and precinct-based counties. In 2024, for your reference, we had 66 counties that utilized vote center. That utilized a precinct. So we broke the counties down by size again, this time though, only using the 2024 turnout. Since the analysis is only looking at 2024, we only looked at the 2024 turnout. So we had a few counties that switched because they had some greater turnout in 2024. And so those counties maybe got moved around. So that's what you can see there. So we had 47 small counties, 31 medium-sized counties, 9 large counties, and 5 extra large counties this time instead of 4. This is a lot of data on this slide, but I actually broke it down to be a little bit simpler. So here's what we found in 2024. What we found is that small vote center counties in 2024, they used two fewer workers on average than the precinct-based counties. Okay? So this is only looking at 2024. They were able to service 58 additional voters. So they were able, for every one poll worker, they were able to service 58 additional voters when compared to the precinct-based counties. For medium vote center counties, they used 41 fewer poll workers on average in 2024 than the precinct-based medium counties. So they used significantly fewer poll workers. They were able to service 80 additional voters per poll worker when compared to precinct-based counties. For the large counties, they used 198 fewer poll workers on average. So again, this is for the large counties, those like 9 large counties that we had. On average, the vote center counties used 198 fewer poll workers than the precinct-based counties, and they were able to service 94 additional voters per poll worker. And again, extra large counties, we were able to utilize Marion and St. Joe are the two extra large vote center counties, and then Hamilton, Lake, and Allen are the three counties, extra large counties that use precinct based. And what we found actually for this analysis was in 2024, the vote center counties serviced less voters per poll worker. So vote center counties actually utilize 464 more poll workers on average. Now, again, this is including Marion County and St. Joe, and Marion County has about, 355, 400,000 voters, that turn out to 112 to 114,000 in St. Joe. So when you're using an average, right, that's going to be, you're only using 2 data points for an average. So I do caution everybody when you have limited data. But again, what we found is that the precinct-based extra large counties are running really efficient elections when it comes to their poll worker usage. And so the next analysis that we wanted to look at was equipment, because this also could play significant implications to the cost, right, of elections. And here's what we found. What we found is we couldn't actually do an analysis on the equipment usage. And this is why. Costs are substantially different no matter where you go across the state, right? Some counties have election day contracts. Some counties have preventative maintenance contracts. Some counties have a couple hours of election day support, and then the rest of it is on their own. Some counties say we have our vendors, our voting system vendors come in and do a lot of the work for us. It just varies across the board so much that it's hard to actually get an analysis when looking at each county specifically. We also found that transitioning from precinct-based voting to vote center voting, if a county wanted to go from vote center voting back to precinct-based voting, that arguably the investment of the equipment was already there. So the average life cycle of a voting system in the state of Indiana is approximately anywhere from 15 years to 20 years that same voting system could be utilized. So if a county purchased a voting system in 2020, that same system could be in use till 2030, 2035 even, right? So there's not actually going to be a difference in cost of equipment if they already have the equipment that is utilized. If the county needs to purchase new equipment to be able to handle a vote center, right, or purchase different kinds of equipment to be able to switch to vote centers, then absolutely, right, there would be a cost associated with that. But if the county does not need additional equipment, or to purchase new equipment to outfit that can be fitted for vote centers, then the equipment is already bought. So there's not really going to be any cost savings. We found that specifically in counties using DRE or direct record electronic systems, we found that on average, those counties are deploying the same amount of equipment. So you all use direct record electronic systems here in Lake County. For any of those that are in your neighboring counties, Porter County, for example, they utilize an optical scan system. And again, what we found is that most of the time they are still utilizing the same amount of equipment. For example, in my community, Delaware County, they just passed a vote center plan. So I vote centers for the first time in 2026. And our clerk, Rick Spengler, has already said we plan to utilize and deploy the same amount of equipment that we would for precinct-based, even though they had 43 voting locations in our precinct-based model. And they're now moving to 26 locations in our vote center model. They're still planning to deploy the same amount of equipment because Rick was like, we want those lines in and out. We want people voting in and out, right? That's where the implementation of vote centers really matters at the county level. So since we couldn't do an analysis on the equipment, we did decide to look at locations. And the literature and general practice around Indiana does show that on average, vote centers are using fewer locations than precinct-based models. From that and provide that data to the Indiana General Assembly. So this did use all 92 counties. We broke them down in the exact same size category as before. Again, this chart is heavy. It's hard for you to see. Don't worry. I'm gonna break it down for you. So what we found is that small vote center counties deployed approximately 2 fewer locations on average than the precinct-based models. For our medium-sized counties, they deployed 9 fewer locations than the precinct-based models. In the large counties, they deployed approximately 4 fewer locations in the in the vote center counties when compared to the precinct-based counties in 2024. And then what we found is specifically in the extra large counties, it's a big difference. It's about 24 fewer locations on average. Now, again, I will stress with the locations, the county sets the plan. Okay, so the county is the one setting the plan. So if the county needs 5 vote centers and they only, or the county must use 5 vote centers, but they choose to do 12, that's the county's decision. If the county they choose to only do one location, then that is the county's prerogative, right? So again, what you're seeing here is because the counties have chosen these plans. Okay. So I did want to kind of show you this in a graph format just so you could see it. So as you can see, the columns on the left, like it's kind of split in two. You have 2 different graphs, but the black columns represent the precinct-based counties and the red columns represent vote center counties. So in the small counties, you can see the small counties, the vote center counties have significantly more precincts on average than the precinct-based counties currently, but they're operating fewer locations. So they're able to service more precincts within those locations. On the medium counties, they have arguably about the same number of precincts on average for the medium-based counties, but they are deploying significantly fewer locations. So that again, 9 fewer locations. Out of the large counties, you also see again, the large vote center counties have a lot more precincts on average. Could be an indication of why they switched in the first place, right? I don't know. That's up to the counties to decide why they switched. Again, we're simply looking at the numbers. And then they did, though, deploy on average about the same number of election locations. And then in the extra large counties, as you can see, the precinct-based have significantly more precincts. That's Marion County for you, okay? That's driving that precinct-based average up in the extra large counties. And they are deploying significantly fewer locations. So we do the literature. We confirmed the literature here in Indiana that on average, vote centers are utilizing and are deploying fewer locations than the precinct-based counterparts. So then we decided to take a look. You've got to bear with me. I know typically, Dr. Kinsella, he'll be up here soon, but now it's just me. So I hope I'm boring you all to death and you guys are staying engaged with me all right up here. You guys doing all right? Okay. I know who all thought you guys were coming to a class at Ball State University tonight, right? Research Methods 101.
Can you explain, maybe I just came late or I'm half deaf, but what is the difference between a vote center and a precinct, traditional precinct?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's a great thing. And it's funny because we always joke that we forget to mention that at the beginning and then we have to answer it. But so precinct-based voting, what does that mean? That means that depending on your address within the county, you are assigned a specific voting location. You must go to that location. If you go to that location, if you go to a wrong location, then they're going to turn you away and they're going to say, hey, you need to go down the street. That's where your precinct is, right? In a vote center model, as long as you are voting within the county jurisdiction and your address is within those county jurisdictions, you would have the ability to cast your ballot at any voting location, regardless of where you live within the county. Okay, that's the 2 differences between it. So now I will say there is a caveat with precinct-based voting. There are counties that offer and deploy what are called super precincts. So what are those? That is where there may be 3, 4, or 5 precincts that are all combined and are voting at the same location. Okay. So in Lake County, you may have some of those. Okay. So for some of you who are like, well, I know there's 3 precincts that are voting at my location. Well, it's because they are able to do that. That's what's called super precincting. They group precincts together, but then only those 2 or 3 precincts that are within that super precinct are allowed to vote there. Okay. Whereas in a vote center location, anybody within the county can vote anywhere, any of those locations. Good thing. Glad we got that out of the way now versus get all the way through it. And I will say that we will answer any clarifying questions at the end. And we do want to give everybody the opportunity to speak. And that's why I'm trying to get you all through this. So here's what we found. What we found is on average, vote centers were able to service more voters per poll precinct-based counties. On average, both precinct and vote center-based counties used approximately 19% of their budget that we were able to calculate. So what we did is we took the base pay of poll workers. So we were able to utilize 50 counties. These were the counties who submitted the survey data. So we were able to utilize 50 counties in this analysis. And we took the lowest paid election worker, which was on average, we calculated was approximately, let me make sure I got my numbers right. It was $136 for our precinct-based counties and then $139 for our vote center counties, okay? So that was the base pay. So across the state, that's what people are getting paid to be poll workers. Then we took that cost and multiplied it by the number of poll workers that were employed in the election. That gave us a base cost, and we divided it by the total cost of the election. We found that on average, vote centers and precincts were spending about 19% of their budget on poll workers. But what we found is that on average, the vote center counties used approximately 113 poll workers to run the election in 2024, whereas the precinct-based counties used 166 poll workers on average to run the election. And so then what we ended up doing is I decided to take the $139 and I multiplied it by the 86 poll worker difference on average, and that equated to about $12,000. And what our analysis found was there was about $12,000 worth of savings for vote center counties on average. And there it is, the dots kind of connect, that those savings that were being incurred in the counties were mainly, the majority were coming from the savings in the amount of the poll workers that they were using. Because they needed fewer poll workers, that was where the savings come from. That's what we've been able to find. So we did decide to look at a historical analysis of vote centers over time, because this is important. And so here's what we found. What we found is that generally, this is using a 12-year analysis. Elections have been happening for a lot longer than that. But generally, over the course of time, vote center elections have gotten a little bit more affordable, and precinct-based elections have gotten a little bit more costly. Again, I caution though, I say that with a grain of salt. Okay, those trend lines are 12 years long. If we had a trend line that was 40 years long, maybe we'd have a better trend line. But vote centers have only been around since 2006. So it's not like we can really do a robust analysis. But what we found is that in 2012, the vote center counties spent approximately $1.58 more per voter. That was the only year in which vote center counties paid more per voter than the precinct-based count, or than the vote center counties. In 2014, the precinct-based or vote center counties saved approximately 45 cents per voter. In 2016, they saved approximately 88 cents per voter when compared to the precinct-based models. In 2018, it was $1.02. In 2022, it was $1.34. And in 2024, it was the greatest gap we've seen. So the vote center counties spent on average $2.04 less per voter. Now, I will say, Hamilton, Allen, and Lake County had the lowest cost per voter, arguably, in the state, regardless of what the analysis shows. So we did dig a little bit deeper here into 2024. We wanted to look at the county cost per voter on size, right? This is where is taking a look at it on size. And we also decided to take a look based on equipment. So we have two different kinds of systems, direct record electronic, and then we have a direct optical scan, which are paper ballot systems. So two different systems. So we did take a look to see if the cost per voter was different in those. So here's what we found. What we found is that a small direct record electronic county utilizing vote centers saved approximately 80 cents per voter in 2024 compared to the precinct-based small DRE counties. The small optical scan counties, so those are paper ballot counties, they had a large savings of approximately $2.33 per voter when compared to precinct-based. The medium DRE counties had significant savings as well for those vote center counties at about $2.27 in savings per voter. And then the medium optical scan counties had about $2.85 per voter savings in 2024 when compared to the precinct base. We don't have any large DRE counties that fit into the analysis or extra large counties that are optical scan. So the only way we're able to do an analysis is if we had both, right? So if we don't have both, we can't do a cost savings difference. But we did find that the large optical scan counties actually spent more in 2024 for vote centers than the precinct-based models. Just breaking it down by equipment, the average cost per voter for counties using direct record electronic was $4.05 per voter, and the 2024 optical scan cost was $7.65 per voter. When you do that average, it averages out to about $5.47 or something like that. And that, of course, is the cost per vote that Kagan gave you in his presentation. We find that vote center counties that are using direct record electronics had the lowest cost of the election at $3.62 per voter. The precinct-based direct record electronics had $4.55 on average. The vote center optical scan counties had about a cost of $7.74 for the 2024 election, and the precinct-based had an average cost of $7.90. We're almost there. Voter turnout. So these were the statistical analysis. So the statistical analysis that Dr. Kinsella did was what was called a difference on difference method. So what this is this is actually looking at, did voter turnout actually be affected by the use of vote centers? And what they did is they wanted to highlight that. So instead of looking at all the other factors, because we know there are a ton of factors that impact voter turnout. And the singular thing is the one reason why voter turnout goes up or down. And so what we did is we utilized this difference on difference where we were able to look at vote center counties and non-vote center counties over the course of time and look at the difference in turnout to see if there was a statistical difference in the turnout for those elections. So what we found is that on average, vote centers did have higher turnout in almost all of these elections, okay? But with all the other factors included, that could be weather, competitiveness, polarization, education, income, etc., right? All of these factors that impact turnout, when those are controlled for, there was actually no statistical difference in the turnout, right? So it's specifically vote centers on its own, okay? This is what I'm saying, on its own, does not have an impact on voter turnout. But vote centers with a competitive election, with media coverage, with et cetera, good weather, because rainy days, low election turnout, okay? It's a real thing. And so all of those factors, you have to control for those and you have to account for those. And when we accounted for those, we found that there was really no major statistical difference. Now, a few of the earlier years, they did approach statistical significance, but none of those were statistically significant when we ran those election cycles. Voter experience. So this is where we use the MIT election data. The MIT election data was 200 to 300 survey participants from the state of Indiana that took this survey. It was done by MIT, and it was done in 2012, 14, 16, 22, and 24. It was done in 2018 because MIT didn't have the grant money to be able to do the survey that year, so they did not do it. And here's what we found. So this is using a simple t-test. So what this means is, did the factors, is there a difference between the two groups, vote centers and precinct-based counties? Did they really have a different experience simply because of vote centers, or were there a lot of other factors that maybe it could have just happened by chance that these vote center counties ended up having a better experience? And here's what we found. What we found is that for these 5 election cycles, they did not show too many significant differences in turnout or in voter experience. So regardless of both precinct and vote center models, they did not show a big difference in the voters' experience. We found that in 2020, 2012, and 2014, the survey respondents did report, and it was significant, that they did have to wait in less lines or wait a short amount of time in those vote center counties, okay? Now, that was only for those 2 years. The rest of the years, that didn't turn out to have statistical significance. And then in 2022, vote center counties, the respondents in vote center counties did report that it was easier for them to find their polling location, right? Probably because they could choose any polling location. But otherwise, again, and I want to stress this, that the role and how they are implemented That's going to matter. And normally, the survey respondents in Indiana, regardless of whether they were vote center respondents or precinct-based respondents, they were satisfied with their elections here in the state of Indiana. That is overall what we found. So again, the data shows, the literature shows, our literature and now our data analysis shows that overall vote centers and precinct-based models, people are generally satisfied and happy with their elections overall. We also found that there was not a statistical difference in voter turnout for vote centers versus precinct based. This is not meaning that it doesn't have a fact. It's just that there are so many other things that go into why a person chooses to vote or chooses not to vote, right? And so you can't just point to one thing and say, oh, if we have vote centers, it's just going to increase turnout no matter what. It's more complex than that. And I just want to state again, as I end on my remarks, is that this is simply just the data. And these are numbers. And we know that numbers are never the whole story, right? Vote centers, precinct-based models, the voter experience stuff was where we tried to get some of that qualitative data, figuring out how voters felt about their experience. But the numbers only show the numbers. And that is a limitation of the study and one we plan to openly address to the legislator and showcasing that, hey, these are just numbers and that it is always a more complex story. And so with that, thank you all for bearing with me. I got through it. I'm going to go ahead and let Sarah pop on up here.
Yes, we are about to enter public comment section.
That question, that was, that is, they are both interviewed. Just make sure everyone understands that part of the process.
So how do you get there?
When are vote centers used?
So vote centers are utilized on election day. So don't forget that in a vote center plan, you can also add additional early voting locations as well. So that's not the only part of the plan, right? Counties as part of vote centers can also choose to, add in additional early voting locations as well.
Okay. We are about to enter the public comment section. If you have not filled out one of these slips, make sure to do so. Put yours in the air if we have one and we haven't collected it. We'll come around and grab it. Perfect. I would also like to recognize Senator Randolph, who came in a little bit later. So thank you for being here. Okay. For purposes of the study and out of respect to other audience members who want to speak, please keep your comments contained on the topics being discussed. That's municipal elections and vote centers. If you begin to go off topic, we will remind you of the topics that we are talking about today. If you continue to not provide comments related to the presentation, you will be cut off. We hope to include public comment in some way in the final report to the General Assembly. If before you make your comments, you have a clarifying question related to the data presented, we will answer those outside of those clarifications for the sake of time. I know y'all been here for a minute. We will not be answering other questions today. You may ask questions as part of your remarks. We will take note of those and do our best to get back to you, which is why it's important to fill out your email out on the sign-up sheet. And to ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, we are timing, so you will be cut off. We will call names one at a time. Raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you, all the things.
Got it.
We are going to start with State Representative Andrade. Check, check. Sorry.
Your state representative for House District 12. I have the honor of serving you here in Munster, Highland, Griffith, and a portion of Cherville. I want to start by thanking every single one of you for being here. It's important that we collectively come out together and ensure that we are giving back the Legislative Council the right information and data to make the right decisions for all of us. So thank you, every single one of you, for being here. Thank you, Secretary David Morales and your staff for also being here and taking the information. I want to speak about a couple concerns on House and Road Act 1633. Number one, not afford to reduce voter access. As we saw on the data, we ranked 40th. We ranked 40th nationally. In 2024, only 61% of the voter turnout. Any policy that creates barriers this problem. Mandating voting centers or vote centers to reduce polling locations, especially in underserved communities and rural areas. Consolidating polling places, travel distance, increase waiting times for fewer locations, transportation challenges for our seniors, people with disabilities, and those without a reliable vehicle. Today is a voting location. We use this for early voting. We use it as a polling location on the day of the election. I know that because I've had 3 elections in the last 6 years. I've been out there asking people for their vote as they come in. And I've seen the lines. I've seen how people have come in, our seniors especially, and someone has to drop them off. There's a family member, a caretaker. A lot of times they cannot endure the long lines, being on a wheelchair or being on a walker. And sometimes there's not even chairs available. And we have to get special chairs for them to be out here in the hallway. It shouldn't be that way in 2025 going into a 2026 election where we still have these kind of issues. This would further that for our seniors, our people with disabilities, and underserved communities. Greater hardship for hourly workers who cannot take extended time off. I've been here when we're about to close the voting locations. People are running in because they just got out of work in their uniform and they're being told sorry because you just missed a deadline. And then they don't come back and vote. We should be making it easier to vote and harder. Number 2, and to close my remarks, one size does not fit all communities, as we saw and we heard the data. And by the way, if you work the election board in Lake County, you're doing an amazing job because we just saw how Lake County is setting the record and is setting the precedent for the rest of the state. So what works in Marion County or in Fort Wayne, I work here in Lake County. I cannot speak for other counties. I can speak for the area that I represent. I'm a member of Lake County delegation. We require extensive infrastructure, multiple machines, electronic poll books, technology systems, adequate staffing, and accessible facilities with parking. Forget that. Smaller counties may lack the resources to implement and maintain this effectively. We should preserve local flexibility so communities can choose the voting system that works best for them. I will finish with this. I urge this study to consider the real-world impact on voter access for vulnerable populations, the value of separate municipal elections, and the importance of local control should be taken into consideration. When this bill came to the House, I voted against it because it's not representing the people that we serve. Thank you.
Representative Harris. I will move my stuff. I'm so sorry.
Good evening. There's not much more I can share that Mike didn't already say. You know, the reality is we need to focus on making voting easier, never making it harder. I can give you a little bit of personal, and the 3 people I'm going to talk about are no longer alive, but my mother and my aunt and uncle that lived next door to us, elderly, I drove them, which I happily did, but I drove them to vote. They had me to do that. What do people that don't have a me do? So making it harder, making it less locations. I'm also worried about the time factor, as Mike talked about. We don't want people who are elderly or not in great health having to stand and wait, and especially if the weather is bad. So it's important to make sure that we always focus on making voting an easier process, that we do not take away the ability for voters to vote. And the last thing I'm going to say, going along with Mike, every community is different. What works here in Lake County may not work in other parts. What works in other parts of the state may not work here. I think by the fact that you have so many of you that have shown up, and thank you for giving up an evening, shows the importance of this topic and really gives a message of where we live and how we feel about vote centers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, there's another one. Jim Weezer. So sorry. I don't know you guys, so I might get your names wrong. So please give me some grace.
Oh, no. Oh, okay, yeah, that's no problem. I'm always telling people I am wiser, but the name's Weezer. That's quite all right. I don't know with jotting down notes what I did. Well, first of all, let me say who I am so the public knows, and you all know. I'm Jim Weezer. Obviously, I was the Lake County Board of Election and Registration attorney for about 15 years. I just recently finished 8 strenuous years as the chairman of the Democratic Party here in Lake County. And so, but the key to that, the reason I bring that up is because the 2 chairmen from the respective parties are in charge of the election board. And we're the ones that operate it, and we're the ones that hold the policy. And I just simply want to say this, number one, it's not a political thing. We have, as you all know, for every Republican employee, we have a Democratic employee. And I could tell you for the 6 years I worked with now State Senator Dan Durnall when he was chairman, and now the last 2 years, I just left the chairmanship with Randy Niemeyer, councilman. We work together. We all work together. That's why Lake County is so successful, because these people that are here, election board staff that are here, work regardless. It doesn't make any difference what your political persuasion is. All we want to do is run fair, honest, and secure elections. That's what we do. So to follow up real quickly on what Mike said and Earl said, what concerns me is we do need to make voting accessible, and we need to make it convenient. And I'm glad that the question was brought up about early voting. You did a great job, by the way. What that question was raised is we have in Lake County, we have, I believe, more early voting sites than any county in the state. We have 11 early voting sites. And in any one of those sites, if you vote there, you could be from Schneider or Shelby or Crown Point or Hammond or Gary. It counts. In the 24 election, 42% of the voters in Lake County early voted. That's huge. Why? Because it's convenient. And we don't want to lose that. And we don't want to lose that. And 2, it bothers me that when I look at statistics like the one that was cited about 40 out of 50, in 2022 mid-year, since we're going into a mid-year election, the state of Indiana was 50th out of 50 states in voter participation and voter turnout. That is sad, deplorable, pathetic. I don't know what your words to use. We can't have that. And I appreciate your statistics are awful important. I agree with it. I know Michelle Feynman, the director, is probably just salivating because she loves that stuff. I hated it when I had to listen to that stuff, but it's very, very important. But we're really talking about people's lives and their ability to vote and their ability to be there. My concerns, finally, specifically about voters, about voting centers is, especially what Earl said, is the accessibility to those voting centers. It just won't work in Lake County, Indiana. It simply won't work. We don't have the public transportation. We don't have the convenience that some other counties may have. I'm not denigrating voting centers. It's a concept, but it isn't a concept for Lake County. A concept for Lake County is for us to vote where we've been voting. That's what's important in the precinct. That is what is so important to our people, so they can be there, they can get there, they can cast their vote on election day if they choose to do that. And I just add one final thing. My other concern is the history of what's happened in the state. And this is no reflection on the Secretary of State's office. You guys do a great job. But in the legislature, let's face what's going on. Early voting, they tried in the last session to reduce it from 28 days to 14 days. And there was an attempt. They've taken away the right for student IDs to be used as a state ID. Okay, thanks. So those are my concerns, and thank you.
Thank you. I just have Janet. If there are several Janets, that's a problem. Okay.
So I am far less eloquent than these gentlemen who have spoken, but it seems to me that this whole discussion comes down to money. And the savings that are going to be realized from what is being proposed, where does that go? Does that come back to the municipality? Does that go to the county? Where does that money go?
Thank you.
Specifically to centers, precinct based. So, and the election. So, election. Receives 100% reimbursement from municipalities, precinct-based counties. Municipalities only reimburse the county 75% of the cost of the election. Election costs. The savings again, depending on the type of precinct-based county you live in, that would just be completely on the cities because they the counties. For us, the counties, if you're precinct based, you will save 25% of the cost of the election. So,
Of giving me a number I want to know where the money goes.
that would be up to locality.
That are real.
That would be up to localities.
It would be up to localities.
Respect, you've been here an hour and a half. Can we hear directly from our Lake County Election Board Director, Michelle Fain, on what she needs to do? I'm going to push back to anybody else at 8 o'clock, and she is on the ground working with these elections.
I'll stand up though. Speaking on 2 points. One, municipal elections moving to county elections is a major concern for me. We have 6-page ballots. Think of a municipal going on top of it, you have a 9-page ballot. It could get very long. Ballot fatigue is real. I was salivating at some of his numbers because I also looked at presidential elections, Senate races. 99% of the people are voting in the first race. When it came down to the county surveyor, it jumped down to 60%. Think about adding the town. And go up to the president's house and knock on the door and say, I have a question, but you can probably get to Janet. You can get to some of our other council members. So it's very important. When it came to the vote centers, Diego did state, local election administrators should be able to tailor and customize their elections to what best suits our needs. And that is 100% accurate. When you look at the costs here, and we heard that on average, it saves counties $1.48 moving from a precinct-based to a vote center. I will tell you right now, moving into a vote center, because we don't have the technology, because when we bought our systems, we were prepared for precinct-based. Our e-poll books, just for the encoders to be able to do it, we have to get a new e-poll book system. The cost will be upfront about $1.6 million. When the county is being faced right now with Senate Bill 1 and dropping our budget by $30 million by 2028, where does that money come from? Will this be mandated? So we do have a lot of our mega centers. I think it's better that the state let the counties choose. We know our counties and what suits our needs. And if we choose to go into those things when we are doing new purchases, we are prepared for those things. We're planning for them and we're ready. Right now, there's a lot of money to spend when we don't have it.
Because a lot of the areas, and you're absolutely right, in rollout, it's huge. Right now, we have 365 precincts, or we did 349 precincts. We have almost 200 poll locations, so we are consolidated a lot. When you think of vote centers, we do have that already in essence for our early voting. You can go anywhere. It's just on election day that you need to stay in your communities. And those mega sites, maybe that is the way we need to go for other ones where you could vote there. But when you have 350 different ballot styles, if any of you have ever been a poll worker in here, imagine how long it is going to take you to tally out your machines, because you have to be prepared everywhere. Our early voting sites in Crown Point, out of those 349 precincts, 326 different precincts went to that location. East Chicago, 200 different precincts went to that. You have to be ready for all of them. It's not like a municipal election where all of Munster would come here or Munster go someplace else. You have to be ready for everyone because we have mills, we have hospitals, we have people working all over. We don't have public transportation. If you live up and down Broadway, you're okay. Any place else, you're not. So we have a lot of underserved communities. We have a lot of disabled voters. And that $1.48 is not the right call for the Lake County. You're not going to see the difference. I think that's what I like.
Thank you. Peter Kaddick. Kaddick. Oh, hang on. I'll hold it for you. Got it.
Okay. I agree with all the previous speakers on all of what they said regarding the accessibility of voting and all that, but I wanted to focus on the messaging portion of the issues of the day that the voters are voting on. I come from a long experience in government and office as a state representative, city judge, county commissioner, and president of the township board. So I have messaged on all kinds of a variety of issues over the years, depending on the office that I was seeking. So it's one thing to run for state representative and you're messaging on statewide issues and all. It's another thing when you're running for municipal office and you're running at the local issues and all. Another thing for county commissioner or county offices on county issues, et cetera. And I think it's a very good policy to have the municipal elections on a separate year all by itself so that the voters can listen to the messaging of the issues that are closest to them, the services that the cities and towns statewide and locally provide. It's one thing to be on the campaign trail, as some of us who are in public office have been. We go on the campaign trail, whether it's political organizations or civic organizations or newspaper interview. We have to stand in long lines messaging to the voters that are participating and in access. And if you're putting in another 9 different offices in the city of Hammond, you have nine council districts. You have some of the judges, the clerks, the mayor, and you're crowding all of that into a even numbered year, whether it's the presidential year or the midterm year, and you're crowding all that in. And it's better to have messaging to our voters, to our constituents on the municipal elections in a municipal election year, because those are the issues that are the closest to the people, that the people want to know who those office holders are that are closest to them on those issues. And that's why in addition to what Michelle said about crowding of the ballot itself, let alone crowding of the lines for the voting lines and all that other business, it is democracy, and it's an important price that we pay for our democracy. And I think we should have city and municipal elections stay as they are so we could message and ask our people to vote that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugene Glass.
I would like to ask the question. As you see, most of the voters in here, people are represented of middle age and over. What happens to the trying to regenerate the younger voter and get them involved?
Thank you.
No, we're only answering clarifying questions. Oh.
Yes, we're only answering clarifying questions if you did not hear that earlier. Apologies. Pamela Putzel. She's coming right there.
What's the plan for transportation? If you do put the voting centers and people can't get to the voting centers, we are aging at at a 10,000 or more every day that are turning 65, and many of us will be incapacitated and have to depend on Representative Harris for his family. How many of us can get to the voting places? That's a really important topic for me.
Thank you. Jessica Bailey.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to Secretary Morales for having a true Northern meeting. It is appreciative. And I am the clerk of Port Orleans, so I have a different view of vote centers than many of you do. However, I do want to maintain that what I hope goes back to Indianapolis is that we have always had local control, and that's where I think it should stay. Porter County does have vote centers, and they are efficient, they are effective, and they are accessible for everyone. And done effectively, vote centers do work on behalf of all voters. However, it should be done for local control. You know what's best for Lake County. You live here, you vote here. Let your board of voter make that decision. It should not be made in Indianapolis, where they do not know what happens in Lake County.
Thank you. Kyle Rizzo. He may have left. He was outside. He may have left. Okay. We will move along. Karen Crowler? Last name starts with, it's Kro, maybe a C. Okay. Sorry. I can hold it for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate very much your exhaustive and obtuse explanation of voting histories since dinosaurs. I would like to know, to examine and compare other states that have the abysmal participation rate that this state has. We are dead last, and we haven't gotten out of the bottom 20% in at least 20 years. Are we doing anything about that? Because the cost per vote goes down, as you said, as the number of people participating go up. It is not a democracy if 10% of people are voting. And we need to work on that, and that's part of the Secretary of State's function, as I understand it. Cost is not the only metric in government. Participation is required for it to be a democracy. What are we going to do about it?
Thank you.
Legislation that we are centers. So the only legislation. Sure. Specific thing in one bill has call 108 from this last session.
Say too, I stated this at the end of my presentation that the numbers are simply the numbers, right? It's a question. Situation is much more complex, right? Than just the numbers. That's much more complex. And we plan to put that in there as a limitation in our study. Absolutely. Glad I sound to so for 7 and yes.
outside registered area. Secondly, if you don't mind, I'm by sensing myself seriously. Says, all right. As mentioned, they ask us to study specific some of these issues that we are asking. So, something.
Claire Picorni.
And I definitely understand your process. It's your election, local election.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. Marissa Gardina. Oh. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Sheila? Question mark. So sorry. I can hold it for you.
Okay, thank you. I really want to thank you guys for all the work you did, all the research, not the way I would have liked it to go on. I'm a Republican and a Democrat stronghold, but in Lake County, we do things right. We do things correctly. And in my world, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And we're fine over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Kaminsky. Sorry, Mary. I'm trying to split the room. I'm coming. Hi, Diane.
Hi, how is everyone? I just want to say I do appreciate all the work that went into the statistics, and I am a numbers person, but it was very hard to understand. Is there any place, is this on the website where we could go look at the study?
Yes.
Once we finalize PowerPoint and the side. So see our meetings are live stream, so you can all see where you can watch.
And you can watch all five.
Okay, coming in, I was neutral because I had no understanding what the difference is between the precincts and the vote centers. I was thinking more along the lines, I would be okay with it if the vote center was really what I'm thinking of as a super precinct center, because I know that my precinct and two others have already been combined into a precinct. I know I happen to be a poll worker at a very small precinct, and we basically sit there most of the day, so I could see consolidating that with another one within the area. I don't think the vote center is going to work, at least not for a lot of the people I know, not for the population, the age of our population, a lot of them who do rely on somebody to take them to a voting center. The other thing I'm kind of confused about is you said it would at one point be up to the county to decide. But then this is going to the legislature. So would they be the ones to say, hey, you have to go to a voting center, or could they still leave it up to the county to decide which way?
Yes. Side. Information. So I'm taking this public comment because, like, if every time we see a thousand centers, obviously, Carol's will take that into account.
Let's listen. Just one more question here.
I had one more clarification then based on what Michelle said. If they say we have to go to a vote center and it's going to cost us over $1 million, all your efficiency stuff just went out the window. That doesn't make sense.
Jessica Matros.
Thank you. I don't need it. I would like to say, I don't need it. I would like to say thank you for coming up here. I know that it takes you away from your family. I appreciate your statistics, but I want you to look across this room. This is a microcosm of what's going to happen if we change our election system. There are 126 seats in this room, and you knew that when you came up here. People have left because they're not going to listen if they can't sit and listen. I encourage you, I challenge you to rethink what you're trying to do, because voting is an experience. My dad paid for it. This is an experience. And you have the opportunity, Secretary of State, of going back down to Indianapolis and talking common sense to them. Michelle, thank you for your statistics.
Kim Lenti.
Thank you again for coming out. I've been a poll worker. I've worked travel board where we actually bring the machines out to voters that can't get out to the polls. I'm a precinct committeeman in Winfield Township who got involved because voter turnout was horrible. In this last election, my precinct was 70% turnout because it was that important. I go back to the founding of our country in the constitutional republic we are, and the basis was everything was local. So you know your community, you know your neighbors, you should know who's in your precincts, and then know who has and hasn't come out to vote, and I think they should stay as local as possible. I don't even like the super centers, the precinct centers. I don't like those either, but you know, that's what you deal with. So I would really hope to stay local with what we have.
Thank you. Betsy Mellon. Everything ends in a question mark. I'm so sorry.
There you are. Thank you. Hi. Just want to make one point that, and I applaud all of you for wanting to do cost savings and really investigating this. But unfortunately, I think my colleagues will agree, we've skipped an important point. It's not so much about voter experience. It's about allowing the voter to become informed. I work as a campaign manager professionally. I've been doing it for 30 years, right here in Lake County. And what this proposal suggests in terms of municipals, the municipals are the most important election. It's widely accepted. We all agree on that, I think, right, folks? It dictates your everyday life. We put that down ballot and we mush it in with a bunch of other stuff. My marketing career has taught me attention spans are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's something we can't change. But what we can do is give these issues time to develop, not make them, beg and scrap for resources. You can't ask a councilman to compete against the president of the United States for fundraising, for advertising space, and all of these things that go into running a campaign. I beg you to reconsider, tell us who we need to talk to beg them to reconsider, because it will disenfranchise the voter. So thank you. Appreciate it.
I do just want to make a quick comment on the expressed by the legislator to look at the cost savings. But you here are the same point. Showing up, saying how you feel about these issues. That's the point that was missing from our data. Context here today that will go into So see stance. We're not making policy recommendations. Those points. So I appreciate you all for being here today. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Sia. Hi, my name is Lori O'Day, and I'm a staff member at the Lake County Board of Elections. And I would like to specifically speak on the concept of moving municipal elections to one of the even numbered years. I agree. When we are in office and candidates are coming to file, it's a huge deal, and we see a lot of human beings coming to our counter to file. If they had to file for both either midterm and local elections, or the presidential folks and the municipals, it's like a tsunami of human beings that all have to get all these checked boxes correct in order to be candidates on our ballot. It seems insurmountable. So I would like to at least be heard in saying that I'd love to keep the municipals separate. We right now have 3 election years and 1 year. And if we move the municipals to an even numbered year, we would have even more work over 1/3 less time. And it's not manageable that way. And just a little bit of numbers, since you haven't heard any numbers tonight. In doing some research, if the 2023 municipal primary were part of the 24 presidential primary, we would have had 447 candidates on the ballot for 296 offices. If the number of candidates from the municipal primary and the midterm primary were combined, we would have had 639 candidates on the ballot for 385 offices. Now, that's not on every ballot because that would be broken down by precinct, but you can see it's serious. And on top of that, we really wouldn't want them to be moved to one of those even numbered years, because then you might get situations where entire town councils are brand new. So if they're all elected in the same year, you will get a town run by rookies. And that doesn't seem wise to me. So I would, if it's going to be moved to an even numbered year, I would strongly suggest they make a provision to have municipal offices split between midterm and presidentials. Thank you. Sorry about your name. Carol Ann. Stelion.
Pittsburgh, all right. Sure, bye. First of all, thank you for coming. My first question. Okay. First question. Does the public comment time start? Was there a recess when the Secretary of State spoke? Because he used up our time.
It's 3 minutes per person.
No. Statement is he's being considered worth $1.50. And you're saying to me as a voter that I'm worth $1.50 because here's how much money you're going to save if you do a voting center. You have to understand, and the one thing that you sort of kind of mentioned, Lake County is unique. We have townships. Maybe you understand that our townships are bigger than, as in numbers, more than, we have 92 counties. Townships are bigger than 83 of those 92 counties. One township, a whole county. So how can you think that what one township can do equates to a county? When you're telling me that in Steuben County, where there are farms, people are accustomed to going 20, 30 miles to the grocery store. That's the same as people in Lake County accustomed to going 5, 10, 15 blocks to a grocery store. Sets are completely different. How we travel, how we work, how we live is different than Whitley County. It is different than Greene County. We are not them. They are not us. More importantly, my biggest concern is when you're, again, maybe you haven't noticed, but we do not have television or any kind of ways to communicate in Lake County. We depend on Chicago's news. So now you're talking about, we're going to hear what they're doing in Illinois. And then how are we supposed to even get our news so that we know that you have this super site somewhere that we don't know where it is, and then we're supposed to go there? I think that when you're starting to look at the number of people in Lake County, when you start looking at the number of people that we use when we're doing travel board, and you don't, maybe you do understand how important travel board is in Lake County. Travel board is the way that we are able to get to all the people who are in the nursing homes who cannot come out. We utilize travel board. I didn't see that in any of your data. When we're talking about voting, we vote. And is that the reason why you want to suppress our voting in Lake County? Thank you.
Damon Flint.
Hi, it's Damon Flint. I want to thank everybody's time. About these election centers and the local polling place. How many people in here quickly have ever worked an election, have been a judge? This is our community. These polling places are where the people come together and meet, especially as we could try to run our government. And we look at this room. We've got Democrats, Republicans, Independent, all trying to voice our opinions, that we're kind of against you taking away our polling places. You want to talk about the costs, or you want to talk about the dollars and cents? But I'm talking, this is our sense of community. I want those people down in Springfield to know you're committing political suicide if you try. Doing so good. Yeah. So I was down in Indianapolis. It's in Illinois for a long time. I moved to understand. I appreciate you guys when you go down there to let them know that the communities feel very strongly about this. And as far as our community growing, it's these elections that are bringing young people in. I've been a judge a couple of times. I've been a deputy election commissioner. I've worked to call people to get them to come into the voting places, and it wasn't that hard to do. In places like Gary and Hammond, where there's so many of these to fill, we got them all filled because people want to do it. And we saw a lot of high school students, a lot of youth out there. This is their first foray into politics. Don't take that away from our communities.
Yeah.
Thank you. Timothy Brown.
Just coming behind you.
Hi. Thank you, gentlemen. It was great. I'm a Ball State grad too. I loved my stats class. I'd like to first say that it'd be nice to see that stuff before this hearing because I would have studied it. Not having it available, I can't comment on that because I wish I could have, because there are some of the things I don't think you put in there that when you're talking about a county that's so small that may only have one contested race, your numbers are going to be completely different compared to what we are here. It's you didn't take that into the equation, I don't think. At least I couldn't see it. You know what I'm saying? It would be nice if I could have seen that. I really don't like the idea of going to municipal elections on combining them, and I'll tell you why. Was said before, that's my mayor, that's my councilman, that's my person that will listen to me when I have to call and make a complaint. And I guarantee you they're going to call me back. I'm not going to get that from my state senator. I still don't get that from my state senator. Okay. And I certainly won't get that from anybody in Washington, D.C. Okay. So it's extremely important. And I've been an inspector now for almost 20 years. And I've got one of the super precincts. I love seeing my people come in. They are my neighbors. I talk to them. When they have problems, I take care of it for them. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I still want to be able to continue to do that. If I can answer their questions, especially if they're coming
from Illinois.
I consider like we have a lot of that going on right now. It'd be great to be able to get them into the right location to do the right thing. And finally, the last thing I want to say, I live on a corner. I can't afford to put any more damn signs on my corner. It's not big enough to get all of the president, the vice presidents, and all the mayors and councilmen on one damn corner. Thank you.
What's the name?
Anthony Berman. Anthony. Sorry.
First, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Taking time away from your families. Thank you, everybody assembled here today. I appreciate you coming out and voicing your opinions. Lake County has lost approximately 127 polling places since 2012, and you can't afford to lose any more. The population's aging too quickly, and we just don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to help those people that can't get to the polls. We need to look after each other as a community, to get out, to vote. Voting is our First Amendment. That is our voice. We need to yell as loud as we can. So thank you.
Thank you. Carol Lanning.
Oh, over there.
Oh, Carl.
Sorry.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming from Indianapolis, especially after work. Northwest Indiana usually gets the short end of the stick for me, but not tonight. So thank you for showing up and showing up after work and late for you. So thank you all. Regarding voting centers, I'm against them. I use my example of trying to early vote here in this building. For the last election, I waited 90 minutes and left. I wasn't the only one to leave because we each had to be programmed. A couple of days later, I went to Wicker Park, the line was out the door. I think voting centers will be the same. And finally, if we do enact voting centers, with the climate of this country and everything that's happening, it'll be more cost effective to place armed guards around those voting centers.
Thank you. Carolyn McGrady.
Oh, I'm right behind you.
You're right. Okay. 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 Good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn McCready. I live in Gary. I'm a retired teacher and an activist, an environmental justice activist. And I know how important it is for people to be involved in what's going on, particularly being able to vote. And I find it really offensive that this kind of situation is even being talked about, that people were being given an opportunity to say why we don't want voting centers. And as many people have said, it's been reduced to money. It's been reduced. Our right to vote, which is our right as citizens, is being reduced to whether it's cost effective or not. I would just say, for a state that has what is the surplus in Indiana now? $2.5 billion. I would be ashamed to talk about changing the way we vote just to save a few $1 million. The other thing is that, I don't know, someone up here, there was a question asked, well, what's going to happen when it goes back to the legislature to vote on this? Can they vote just despite what everyone here is saying? Can they just vote for us to have centers? That is absolutely terrifying, but I feel that that's a real possibility. I don't think that they would have
made all of this happen in the way that it's happening, try to pitch it as some kind of cost saving adventure that's going to benefit us. I think that they're doing it so they can say, well, you know, we told them everything, we gave them all the numbers, and then we decided what's best for them. And we know what's happening on a national level. This is exactly what's happening on a national level. And so I don't know exactly how we're going to defeat this, but we have to, because we will end up in a situation where we will have our right to vote taken away from us all over the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Dean.
Yep, as everyone has said tonight, as you know, there's a lot of everything that's been basically talked about has been to disenfranchise the voters, right? Across the board, and you're hearing it. It's Republican. Full disclosure, I am part of the Munster Democratic Precinct organization, and we're in complete agreement on this should not be, right? We shouldn't be having this. Everything is disenfranchising. Even yourself, Mr. Secretary, you said that you are for expanding voter and getting all this voting through. And then I'll just finish with this comment. Why did you send our voter rolls to the federal government?
That's not
You know?
Cassandra Mosley. Cassandra Mosley. George Janik.
Oh, bye, George.
Christy, it's either Bone. Christy. A lot of people are getting up. Are any of you Christy? No. Carol Ann Seaton. I think you already spoke. Okay. Jim also already spoke. That was Jim. He already left, just so you know. Jim, not wiser, but wiser. Hargrove. I got it.
Thank you. My name is Barb Hargrove. I have been a precinct committeeman in Gary, and I am presently a precinct committeeman. My precinct was 565 people, and the glorious people in Indianapolis expanded it to 1,565 people. So my precinct right now, because I have two precincts in my precinct where we vote, is over 2,000 people. So my precinct is a voting center. Okay. I would also like to say that part of the problem with our voting in Indiana is gerrymandering. People do not have the opportunity to vote for a Democrat and a Republican because of what's going on in Indianapolis as far as
vote centers and municipal elections.
Okay, as far as redistricting. Anyways, so what I would like to say in conclusion is that we do not need voting centers. I have worked in downtown Gary. I know the number of people who have no transportation. I know the number of people who are in walkers and wheelchairs. They cannot get on a bus to go somewhere. They have no relatives or people to get them there. And they're the ones, the seniors are the ones who vote. Okay. I also work with the League of Women Voters. We go out to high schools and colleges and we register students to vote. It's really hard to tell students your vote counts when you plan to do this and then somebody else takes it away. So we have our needs up here and maybe they're not the same as someone else, but we're real people with real needs. We care about each other. And we really hope that this information gets down there and you listen and the people in the State House listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Rachel Kalar. I got it, Lindsay.
I just wanted to give a comment on the changing of the municipality elections to even years. As a mom with 4 children and a very busy life, it's very hard to kind of even look at the national elections with the ballots. And if we added the local elections on that same ballot, I'm very concerned people will just either vote one ticket down the line. And obviously local elections matter, and you're not concerned who politics at the local level as much. And having the big long ticket of officials is going to be disconcerting if those are changed. So I would, as a young mother, I would really appreciate having different times for those elections to really look at the ballots. Thank you.
Mark Taylor.
Hi.
Mark.
Hi.
I can go for you.
I had a question about, does the state track in voting centers or precincts, the number of people who are rejected for having come into the wrong place? The wrong precinct, or they live outside of the area. Is that information tracked? Anybody keep a record of that? Because that would be an interesting comparison to make.
Something that is tracked in the state. Is that
okay? Well, that was that. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Ida Gillis.
Lindsay is right behind you over at microphone. There you go.
Thank you. Like everyone else, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. Your statistical analysis and your savings, you did not include equipment. So I'm assuming that you didn't include startup costs, additional administrative costs at offices, and the $1 million in relationship to that. Is that true? If it is, then your savings, are you going to footnote your savings to say there are other variables that were not considered that would affect that number?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. That's right now. Our report has about page and a half worth of limitations to the study.
Is that one of them?
Yes, because again, we aren't able to gather every single county of every single contract of every piece of equipment that is deployed. With only 4 months that the legislature gave to get.
Yes, so
that will be taken into.
I think it's a misrepresentation then to put that out. That number is a savings because it's not a true savings because it does not include so many different variables. So you're misrepresenting the true cost of calling centers. Second thing, are any of they are cost centers. Are any of these voting centers located in urban, underserved, income neighborhoods?
The county sets the vote center plans. So if the county were to implement vote centers,
so that means no. Thank you.
Well, that would be up to your county. That would be up to you all in Lake County.
Should Taylor. She left. Okay. Jeffrey Gunning.
First, let me say thank you to our Secretary of State for bringing this forum to us. It might have been helpful to have shared who authored and sponsored the legislation, the House bill that we're discussing here tonight, and I understand there's several aspects of those. I speak in opposition to the proposal to move municipal elections into presidential years or other off-year elections. Like most of the people here tonight, I have lengthy experience in local government, in politics. I've served as a local town council member for 8 years, and I've probably got more than 3 decades in as a municipal attorney. I've also served as co-counsel for the Lake County Election Board and Voter Registration Office. Principally, I think there are harms that we can't measure economic cost if the municipal elections are moved in with the other elections. Those types of things, I think, include the larger problem we have in this nation involving divisiveness. It's been stated that all the local issues are the most important. They're closest to the people, and they are the ones that usually start the dialogue that brings us together and makes those solutions. So I think the deleterious effects of losing the importance of the local elections be located in a down ballot position. It needs to be explored further. Harm comes in the potential of misinformation with the candidates, with the election issues, and the like. We've heard the term tonight of ballot fatigue, and I think the concern here would be what I might call information fatigue, that the public becomes so inundated with campaign messages from the top ballot positions that they're exhausted and don't give the local ballot positions the proper attention if it were to change in this particular fashion. All of our institutions and education systems, everything is based on taking large pictures and breaking them down. And this is one breakdown that we shouldn't change and shouldn't move. In addition to those observations, I would ask the Commission to look at advisory opinion of the Public Access Counselor's Office, 11 FC 271. It briefly gives any reader a glimpse of the amount of work and therefore pressure that our election board employees and volunteers are under in conducting an election. If we enlarge a ballot, to 9 pages or 12 pages because we've added on the local elections, that has consequences within the office, that has consequences with the volunteers, and even with the voters. So I would refer that opinion.
Thank you. Ida Gillis, did she leave? Oh, Sherry's back. Okay, I was like, I thought I said that name. Okay. Tyrone Hamilton.
I'm not going to be very long. I'm opposed to a vote center, and I can give you. When Frank Moran came to my precinct, and when he first ran, and I asked him, I saw him there 5 times in one day. I said, "Why are you here?" And he told me something that I did not know, even though I've been running this precinct for I don't know how long. He said, "You are the highest voting precinct in the county." Fantastic. Now, I say that to say this. Since my precinct was combined with another precinct, and we moved our polling place from one location to another location, the number of people voting went down. My precinct is an older precinct. So we have to knock on doors constantly asking, do you need help to get to the precinct? Do you need help to get to the polling place? So that is where we don't need to move somewhere else where they're not lost. They just can't get there because we're old. And I'm old. Okay. I'm 75 years old. I grew up in Alabama where the right to vote you had to fight for. The right to vote is not given to you. You had to fight for. I'm done.
Thank you. Clerk Brown.
So I want to acknowledge our council president, Christine Seal, please, right there, Lake County President. And I acknowledge her because to listen to whatever you have to say, because my job as a county clerk is to sit on the election board. We have a great voter registration department, which is ran by Michelle Famous. Let's give her a round of applause. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I'm glad they came because they gave us numbers to
and I've been saying this before in Center County. I know these. And the bottom to this is an election board member. After listening to what you have to say, there's no way I'm going to vote for such a move. I served as clerk before you from 2010 to 2018, and the election votes in the city will give them no. Back again. Now state size does not fit all. And in Lake County is the right way. The statistics show that. So I thank our Secretary of State for coming. I thank him for the numbers, and I want you to get out here and let everyone know we're going to. As far as the municipal elections, same thing. I've served as a councilman and gave for 4 years. The government runs city and town first, then township, then county, then state, then federal government. A council person, they know the mayor, they know the clerk, they know the judge. By the time they come to the county, they're in trouble. So, you know, we have to do everything in our power to send a strong message back. So if we have to go to court, good. Whatever it takes, strong. Single situation. I say that because veteran, you go to the county. It's a veteran have 6 weeks and 11 cases. Right now, we do cities and they're early voting. Speak. So there is no reason to come down here. And I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about those legislators that don't know us to put a long place like that. So let's get ready for the fight. We're going to win. Thank you. God bless you.
Okay. That wraps up our public comment section. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the presenters. Your questions were not a part of our topic.
Wrote it down.
I mean, they're all done.